Hi, welcome to the Connection Podcast. I am Jenni Rae, also known as the Connection Catalyst. Connection and this podcast for me is personal. As a driven professional, I found myself an expert in all things work and business, but it was at home that I really needed clarity and ease. After finally finding it, one marriage breakdown and one marriage reset later, and finally discovering what really works to have connection in modern relationships, using science, simplicity, and soul, our signature program, Rise into Regulation, was born, that's giving so many others in modern driven relationships back clarity and ease for good. On the podcast today, we're going to dive deep together on all things relationships, business, identity, and leadership. Clarity and ease is at the heart of it all, and we are so happy to be with you so that you can have what you need in connection, mind, body, and soul, too. We have a guest today on the podcast. I am so excited to welcome Jenni Rae onto the podcast today. Now, I was warmed to Jenni Rae when we first connected, when I first stumbled across her profile, because I do see a lot of high performance coaching mentors, maybe because of the industry I'm in, maybe because of my For You page, but a friend actually connected us. And Jenni Rae really stood out to me as someone I wanted to dive deep with for a few reasons. Not just because of the shinier ones that seem to stand out. Jenni Rae is a Division I athlete. She knows what it is to push herself. She's a 7-figure entrepreneur, but it was her personal journey that really stood out to me. It was her love for her family and also the experience and the journey that she has walked through, not only through love, but through loss. And the hardest journey a parent could go through, the heartbreaking loss of her beautiful boy, Jose. So we are so privileged to meet with Jenni Rae today to cover everything from the depths and the challenges and the victories that come with achieving in life, but also the most important things that we also know are so important for our own selves at home, the deepest love, and also the most challenging of losses. I want to welcome Jenni Rae onto the podcast today. Jenni Rae is a performance coach and a brand strategist who helps high-achieving women scale their next 500K and beyond without burning out or selling out. As a former Division I athlete and recovered perform-a-holic, she's coached over 20,000 entrepreneurs to rewire their internal operating systems for success. Through her feminine hustle method, the Rise Leader experience, Jenni Rae equips leaders to break toxic performance patterns, create sustainable success, and lead from wholeness instead of fear. Now, our conversation did start off a little bit more high level, and my curiosity was piqued not only by her personal and professional journeys, but the synchronicities also really stood out to me. Jenni Rae's program also is called Rise, and I just know that Jenni Rae is a perfect person to uncover and explore what vulnerability is, not only in business, but behind the scenes as well. So in leadership and at home, what does it look like to be vulnerable? I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that word means for you, what stands out for you recently, anything that you've been through that sticks out for you around the word vulnerability, and your own personal belief around the importance of that and where you stand on vulnerability at work and at home.
Oh, Lauren, thank you so much for having me on. And I love this conversation because I feel like for high performers, this is the non-negotiable. If you ever want to, as you even talk about, rewire how you work, how you lead, how you love, vulnerability is truly the non-negotiable. So I love that you're bringing this conversation. So, what immediately sticks out to me when you say that word, I just think about the almost the fight that I had to go through to understand it, to learn it, to get it, because it's not how I was raised. It's not how many of us were raised. We weren't raised with this understanding of, or this allowance, I should say, of being vulnerable and finding safety in that vulnerability, whether that was emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, all these places where we find ourselves vulnerable. But at the core, it's our emotional safety. I think a lot of times that is where high performers, we've set so much of that aside. And so then we don't know how to be vulnerable. We know how to work. We know how to hustle and grind. And we get such a reward from that immediately. You can go do something, you can achieve something, and you get this dopamine hit from it. So we've really trained ourselves as high performers out of vulnerability because what we're chasing is that dopamine hit of achievement. And man, I was the queen of it. That was how I'd structured my entire life until I had my first kid at 21, right out of college. It was a surprise, like 2 months after getting married, I'm pregnant. And so I'm a kid raising kids. And I ended up having 4 kids in 6 years and then losing my son, Hosea, tragically in his crib. And that began the journey for me of really understanding what vulnerability was. And we can deep dive into vulnerability and all that. But just as you were saying it, what comes up for me is just thinking high performers, we've trained ourselves out of it. We don't know how because we haven't had the permission. So we have to give that to ourselves.
I want to speak to that as someone who came from a really, let's just say, corporate background, $1 billion industries, really fast paced, not even having my own business at that stage, knowing that the way to succeed in that environment was to be as switched off from my own self as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Your success at that level, at that time for me, very much matched my ability to dissociate. So it took a lot to be able to even ask myself the question, am I switching off from myself? Am I dissociating? Am I choosing not to be vulnerable? Because the question didn't even occur to me to ask as something that was useful. I was so attached to this idea that success and performance were so enmeshed. The better I was able to create this identity, create this performance, the more successful I would be. What I didn't realize, though, at the time was that was keeping me absolutely stuck in that place, whether it was in business, whether it was in my relationships. But before we dive down that rabbit hole, I would love to ask you, first of all, what you believe the difference is between, let's say, burdening others and that victim mindset of maybe oversharing or being over vulnerable, or because that's what people identify as oversharing, as over vulnerability. That seems to be the interlinking connection there between those words. What do you believe is the difference between that versus sustainable nervous system co-regulation with others, or even just on an authentic ownership of who you are and your own journey? How would you separate the two for people who are just exploring what vulnerability is and even just being able to almost look at the word without flinching?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question, Lauren. I think there's 2 things for me. Number 1 is what separates it for me with oversharing versus just genuine heart vulnerability is my aim. I am constantly asking myself, what was my intention there? What was I up to? And we don't often ask ourselves that because we don't want to believe that we're up to anything other than what we've told ourselves we're up to. And I know that sounds maybe like a funny question to ask, but I have trained myself to ask myself consistently. For instance, if I'm in a conversation and I name drop or I drop something, I ask, there's something that rises up in me and I'm like, ooh, what was my aim? What was my aim there? Or even with this tragedy and this story that I've gone through, I've had to learn over the years, what is my purpose? So when I say aim, what is my purpose? What is my intention in sharing right now? Is it a reach for someone to move towards me? Am I trying to get something? And again, as humans, we have needs. And so there's nothing wrong with needing that connection with another. And also, it is a razor thin line between I'm doing this to get, I'm doing this to manipulate a situation. I'm doing this as a performer, even to manipulate your perspective of me. And so this is where vulnerability can go really sideways. So that's why I said there's 2 pieces to this, because number 1 is when you can train yourself to question your aim, your purpose, or your intention, you'll stay on course no matter how the other person responds. You'll be able to stand in integrity knowing, you know what, my intention there truly was to share this part of me as a gift. And when I can see vulnerability as a gift, that doesn't mean the other person can receive my gift. There's a lot of people that you can give gifts to that can't unpack them, can't open them because of their own lack of vulnerability, their own knowing and understanding of how to be with vulnerability. So this is where we have to like get in the gym of vulnerability and learn how to flex our muscles and do the reps, because it's never going to be perfect, because you're dealing with another human on the other side of you who also has their own journey with vulnerability. So the first and foremost thing is me. I'm the only person that I can control. So what's my aim? What's my purpose? What's my intention? But I think there's another piece of this here is almost a precursor a little bit to vulnerability is congruence. You might say connection, but I feel like congruence is I am the same on the inside as I am on the outside. Because see, as high performers, we have mastered the art of the mask and performing, proving ourselves, pleasing everyone, doing all these antics that again are just patterns that we don't even most of the time realize we're operating in until lifes or and it doesn't work anymore, until something comes back our way that's feedback telling us that way of behavior isn't working anymore. So for me, it was almost this co-journey of becoming more congruent, becoming more of who I was, letting me just be okay with me and letting down the mask. And so I can tell you there was probably a lot of times where maybe it was an overreach, maybe it was a victim thing, maybe it was a little bit sideways. And that was part of the journey of learning how to not just be vulnerable, but to also be congruent at the same time. And I just don't think you can separate those.
Yeah. So when it comes to people who have been through a lot and people who have experienced the toughest of journeys, I think there's no one better placed to be able to speak into the fear around being too much, around my story is my story, and absolutely having that congruency around what's happening internally versus externally. Have you ever experienced, when it came to early on in your journey and trying to find that balance and find that congruency, as you said, between what's happening internally to you versus what you feel safe enough to express? It's such a cornerstone to relationships, not only our intimate relationships at home, but our work relationships, our friendships, our family dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
How did you navigate in the absolute depths of the human experience when it comes to holding yourself with tenderness and being brave enough to ask yourself the tough questions and care for yourself so that you can find that congruence? What was your experience? The very first time that we met was on your page, and immediately I felt drawn to you around your not only vulnerability, but your ownership of your story. And I think that's something that's so powerful to speak into, who have that fear around, okay, that's great for her. Congruency sounds nice, but I've been through too much and the people around me don't support me. And if we take that one step further and go into business, well, my experience in business is completely opposite. If I share, and anytime I have in the past, I have evidence that me being vulnerable is a huge risk, not only personally, but professionally. How did you find and explore that line between bravery and, oh no, am I too much?
Oh, such a great question. I think at the beginning for me, I really actually believe this, that I am too much. After my son passed away, I went through this really dark night of the soul. We've heard that term, right? And it was at least a 2-year period. And I was journaling like crazy, like the most vulnerable writings ever. My husband actually at the time, he was a pastor at a large church. It was 13,000 people. And I thought that people might want to hear what I was wrestling with, might want to meet me in that. And so I was sending my journal entries and my wrestling with God, with myself, with life, with all these deep questions, right? That really our life gets distilled down to like what's really important whenever you lose somebody, especially a child. And I was not met with care, with connection, sadly, at that time. And I don't say that to, you know, it is what it is at that point. Again, I think this is the point, is that sometimes people may not have the tools to handle vulnerability. And so what happened for me was I adopted a story around that, around myself, because that's what we tend to do. When we are wounded in our attempts to be vulnerable, we will always flip it and turn it into a story about who we are. And this is a huge part of the work that I do with women now, with high performers, is unwinding and uncovering what that story is. What is the meaning they have drawn into the moments of their life that wounded them in those vulnerable places the most? That was the most bare I'd ever been. Here it is. Here I'm wrestling. I was not met with the connection, the love, the care. So I made that mean I'm too much. My thoughts are too deep. I shouldn't be wrestling. So I stuffed it all and did what it sounds like you did at work. It was like, whoop, okay, show up. Let's perform. Let's do this thing. Let's show up for work and just be present, but like truly dissociated, disconnected from my true self and who I really was, because my true self at that time was really wrestling. I really did have a lot of questions. I really was angry. I was super angry. But again, I grew up where anger wasn't allowed. And so we just masked it. And I was able to make it through that because I could take it out on a soccer field or a basketball court. I could take it out on a ball or somebody that I was, could just bump and jostle and get all that aggressive anger out. But really deep down inside, it wasn't anger. Anger is always covering something we really feel. And what I was really feeling was fear that if I really show who I am, people will pull away. I'll be abandoned. I won't belong. I'll lose connection. So I think at the heart, most of us are afraid that if we really show who we are, connection will be broken instead of restored, or instead of somebody moving towards me. And what our brains do, I do a lot of neuroscience work as well. Our brains keep file cabinets. This is probably why we're so drawn to each other, because we are on the same wavelength, right, with this stuff. But our brain keeps filing cabinets of all the life experiences that are evidence that this belief is true, that this meaning we're giving it is true. And so for me, it really did start out with this feeling of I'm too much. But then that actually became a gift. That, in a sense, that rejection, that abandonment I felt led me on the journey that I've been on for 20 years of reclaiming who I really am, rediscovering who I am, and allowing that vulnerability to come out now in healthy ways.
I love how you said that's allowed your vulnerability to come out in healthy ways. Was there a particular point in time where you wrestled with that dance, but that protective pattern, saying don't say it, don't share it, don't even express that to the people who, are supposed to support me, and where you found that conscious moment in time? Was there a moment in time where you felt torn between, okay, I can hang on to the old version of me, the version of me that says, okay, in order to survive, I'm going to have to perform. I'm going to have to put on a show, even to someone who's close to you, who maybe has their own struggles. And it can be challenging to hold someone in the depths of a really challenging time, where you felt that decision happen, where you moved from that, like you said, that old corporate mentality. This is what I learned. I have the evidence. I have the evidence of an entire community experiencing that shock of, oh my gosh, this is such a real moment in time where I'm being called to step in and step up, and I don't know what to do. And that resulted in this learned behavior for you around, okay, well, I can't share, I can't do that. Is there a moment that really stands out to you where you chose to take that risk and it started to pay off, and you started to get that feedback around, okay, it might be risky, it might hurt, but the payoff is going to be so much more important to me in the long run. And why? What happened for you, and what was a turning point around that being something where the benefits started to outweigh the risk?
Yeah. So I think that there's a couple things that come to my mind is one, there's the vulnerability even within our own homes, right? Like we went through this tragic loss, two people that go through it together, two people that handle things very, very differently. And so even in my own home, it was risky at times to be my most vulnerable self because I didn't know what I'd be met with because my husband was having his own journey with vulnerability, his own journey with grief. And I know that those protective mechanisms for me, what I tended to reach for was anger, was disappointment, staying in a space of being disappointed. So the turning point for me, that was all protection because the most vulnerable thing as humans we actually can experience is joy. It is so vulnerable. So I remember the turning point for me 2 years after when I let myself begin to feel joy again, when I let myself laugh and play and smile. And it was terrifying more than sharing something deep, dark from my soul. It was simply letting somebody see me have fun, letting somebody just see me enjoying life because I didn't feel like I deserved to ever enjoy life again. And so that was extremely vulnerable. That was a turning point. Another turning point for me was in business when I wasn't a businesswoman. I was a soccer player, became a mom, had 4 kids in 6 years. We moved twice. We went through multiple job losses and a loss of a son, all in our first 7 years of marriage. And so after our second job loss and another move, I found myself like, okay, I don't want my life to be controlled by an entity. Say, like we've signed on the dotted line. This is where our income comes from. And so my husband and I started a business together. And the business journey for me really became a vulnerable lifeline because I discovered myself. It's like I went to personal development school on steroids, having to learn all of these parts of me where I'm this high performer. And up until now, I could do everything. And I'm like, I don't know how to do any of this. And one of the things that I said when we entered into that business, my first business was a network marketing business. And I'm like, I will do anything. Just don't make me sell things and don't make me speak. It's called direct sales is another name of it. So here I am selling things every day and getting asked to speak constantly. And I was not a speaker. My husband was the stage guy. He was the big charismatic presence. I'm like, I'll do all the behind the scenes stuff. And so speaking for me, I realized came from a deep place. I'd always been able to put my head down, hustle hard and speak through my actions and my performance. But this was a season of my life where it was a reclamation of using my voice and it not being heard and it not being met, even throughout childhood. So many times that I didn't feel heard or seen or known. And just like, again, the evidence, the brain evidence of when I speak, bad things happen. When I'm vulnerable with my voice, people pull away and I'm too much. And so that was why I was like, I never want to speak. I'm not going to do it. And I'll never forget my husband and I got to 6 figures within our first 12 months on this track that this company had. We were the youngest in the company to do it. We were the fastest to do it. And so they asked us to speak at their global convention. And there's 5,000 people in this room. The following year was like 10,000 and it just kept growing. And I'll never forget walking up onto that stage and knowing that this was a turning point for me, that this was a line in the sand moment where I was declaring my voice does matter. And this whole time I was afraid of, I can't speak because something outside of me, they won't hear me. They won't listen. And I realized it's in me. Am I even listening to me? Am I even hearing me? And I believe that's where vulnerability begins because we are waiting on other people's responses to us to give us permission to be vulnerable, to take that next step, when really it is our responsibility to first and foremost be vulnerable with ourselves, to know ourselves enough to, again, know what we're up to, know what our aim is in any conversation. Is my aim to connect with you, or is it really just to get something from you? And if my aim is connection every single time, vulnerability, it's a gift, because no matter how you respond to me, I will feel more connected to me because I stepped into that. So those were two major turning points for me, was just the allowing myself to experience joy after such deep heartache. And still to this day, like, joy still feels like the most vulnerable reach for me. And then also stepping into something that I did not feel skilled in. And it's now become one of my greatest assets in business because I chose to do that and be vulnerable.
I love that so much. And again, I think we're going to have to keep talking about synchronicities, but I just had a call just finished just before we connected. One of the questions was, how can I learn to play again? How can I learn to play again? Because I feel like I've got this skill set and I'm getting my confidence back and things are going really well in my relationship, but I feel like I'm hiding behind this mask. I want to start being the silly mum. I want to start joking around with my husband again. And it was so interesting that in terms of synchronicities, that exactly what you covered there around joy being so risky. And we think that expressing our fears, expressing our anger, expressing our disappointment, things like that, that's vulnerability. But the risk that comes with, okay, how about I regulate and I invite you in? I invite you into my experience and into my reality, and I show you, you know, it's like rolling over and showing you my belly. It feels
Yeah.
dangerous. The risk around joy and everything that it represents, particularly in a marriage, it represents, if I'm going to share my joy, does this mean that I have completely forgotten that all of the things that I want us to work on, like they're just erased away? If I share my joy, does that mean that you're going to see that as any of the challenges that we've ever experienced are completely behind us? So when that other shoe drops and I do experience pain or we do hurt each other in some way, the fall is going to feel that much more painful. The drop is going to hurt that much more. And I love everything that you said there around, am I even hearing me? Because if we can't give our own selves permission to experience joy, how can anyone else? How can anyone else? And I adore the tenderness that you expressed there around, yeah, it's terrifying, especially when you've been through something so intense. You know, what does it mean to have joy? What does that represent if I have joy? And how can I honor the complexity of who I am and everything that I've been through while also embracing the lightness of this journey as well that we're all on? I don't think that that's talked about enough, how scary joy can be. You know,
Yeah.
joy that begins in our own selves, and what a catalyst that can be for the people around us. Because we think that those thoughts that can run through our head is, oh, okay, if I'm joyful, then everything's forgiven and forgotten. If I'm joyful, that erases this experience that I've been through. When it's the opposite. We get to have that duality. And I think by exploring that duality, we get to honor the authentic parts of ourselves so much more.
Yeah. And I think you hit something really important, Lauren, because if you hadn't said it, I was going to say it, that we don't all have these massive losses and these marker moments where we're having to figure out how to have joy on the other side of it. What we all deal with on a daily basis is exactly what you said. You were just having this conversation around. And I talk to women about this all the time too. It's, if I choose joy right now with my spouse, will he forget every single thing that happened over the last 2 weeks? And so I think this comes down to, are you willing to honor yourself and what you want in that moment? And I've taught this with my kids too. I'm big on, if I'm getting something, I want my kids to have it because I want them to catch it so much faster than I have. I don't want them to need 20 years, 30 years of coaching and therapy and all the stuff. I want them to have those voices and mentors in their life. But man, if we can fast track through some of this stuff. So I was literally just talking to my kids the other day about it, is don't give the ability for you to feel and experience joy to anybody else. Don't let anybody else hold the keys on that. And I know we say these cliche little things and we see statements like that on Instagram, but the reality of walking it out in any given moment is this person on the other side of me, I'm scared because they did hurt me. We are experiencing disconnect in some way right now. And also, I want to play. I want to be silly because I can't afford today to be in such a disconnected, energetic space, angry space. And so, when we don't let ourselves feel joy and celebration, it impacts our work. We do have to
Mm.
switch gears into the performative work, Jenni Rae. I have to show up that way. If I don't let myself feel the full spectrum of emotion, which on one side is deep, deep, deep grief, and on the other side, which this is just the continuum of being human, right? Human emotion is joy. There are two massive extremes on this continuum. If I don't let myself feel that, I can't create. My best work
Mm.
comes when I let myself have and experience the vulnerability of joy in the midst of sorrow, in the midst of grief, in the midst of something. So, like, I just said goodbye to one of my daughters for college this week. It was so hard because I have been blessed with the gift of I have two daughters and a son, and then my son who passed away. And my oldest is gone doing her thing, but my middle daughter, she spent 2 extra years at home doing college here for free in Tennessee and working her business. And so we got extremely close over the last couple of years because she styles entrepreneurs for TEDx talks and stages, and she does a lot of visibility stuff with entrepreneurs with her brand styling. And so I got to help her launch this business and see it become successful and work on all the sales pages and the copy and her offer. And like we were just in the nitty gritties. And it wasn't about this external, like we're creating her offer. This was pulling out of her vulnerability. This was like, what's in you? What are the gifts and the gold inside of her name's Eden? What is the gift inside of Eden that the world needs? And that's a very vulnerable place. And so all of this beauty that we got to birth over the last couple of years, and then she decided it was time for her to not just be going into rooms of 40 and 50-year-olds and coming to all of my stuff, which she walks in these rooms and people adore her and love her and she connects with them. But she's like, I think I need friends my own age. And she's able to take a branding course to keep her on track in school. So all that to say, it was a decision that's like, okay, I don't even, we both were like, why are we doing this? Why are you going to school? Like we're holding hands, clutching hands as she's driving to college and leaving her. We're sobbing, we're crying. And also, this is the and also I'm going, I am so excited for you in this next season. I know it's going to be exactly what you need. We both heard it clearly. We both had a peace about it. We both had a knowing this was her next right step. And also, it sucks and there's grief and there's sadness. So it's like we've just been able to waffle back and forth this whole week of going, how are you doing right now in this moment? She's like, gosh, I'm feeling sad. And also, I'm going to play basketball with all the guys. I'm having so much fun. And I'm like, oh, I can hold both. I think that's the reality of just being able to be vulnerable with people is just that duality, holding both joy and sadness at the same time.
And I think that that's a really tough concept for so many of us who are really good at doing one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Like if you're good at performing, duality is going to feel scary. Like
Yeah.
I can do this thing. How can I hold space for both? Because this is going to be a word that's going to be activating for some people, but perfectionism. I have to do one thing right and it has to look right. So that word duality, I think, is such a deep invitation for so many of us. What does that mean? What does duality mean? How is it possible to have duality? And I think the best way to start that is that word. Anytime you say but, switch it.
Yeah.
Start exploring
It's
what
just and also,
happens when you say
yeah.
but. Like, I'm really annoyed at my husband and I want to go
And
out on date night. I'm killing it in my business. And I get to hold space for the fact that things aren't my favorite at home. And I don't have to criticize myself just because all areas of my life aren't magically, I don't have all the boxes ticked all at one time. I can hold place for that duality and forgive myself for not having things perfect. And then in that place of vulnerability, suddenly that's where possibility happens
Mhm.
around, oh, okay, well, if this is something that's important to me, if my business is important to me, if college is important to me, if these things, we start to finally get curious about what actually matters, what our priorities are, and how to support them instead of, oh, okay, when you use the word but, it's, well, these things are going great, so I should be grateful. Everything should be fine. I shouldn't tell my daughter that I'm missing her today. I want her to be happy. The but word is singularity. It's like, she's at college, everyone has to be happy, everything has to be great. Versus the duality, which is she's at college. And it can be really hard. And now
Yeah.
because we hold place for the duality, because I have gotten brave enough through my life journey around sitting with discomfort and making friends with it, I can make this a rich experience that only brings us closer, as opposed to that's one or the other. I have to be happy with her, or I have to keep her by my side forever.
Mhm.
Possibilities happen in that space.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can shift so quickly into trying to manage and control other people's emotions, like with what you said of just like, gosh, I don't want to tell her I'm feeling sad because I don't want her to feel. I don't have any control over what she feels and how she receives my vulnerability. So again, what's my aim in telling her? It's really to connect with her and let her know how much I love her and that she is a valuable, important piece of my life and this family, and that her felt presence in our home, that we're missing it. And so, if my aim is, I want to tell her this so that she fixes this feeling I have inside of me, so that she responds in some certain way that lessens my grief and my sorrow, I'm setting myself up for disaster in the relationship. And we can do that so often, whether we are, when we're trying to manage somebody else's response to our vulnerability or manage their emotions about our vulnerability. So, again, vulnerability is a gift we get to give and give clearly the way that we want to, which my goal and my aim every time I give it is connection. It's to draw a bridge that invites possibly them to walk across that bridge. So every time I'm vulnerable, I see it as me like laying down the drawbridge. And it's an opportunity for that person to walk across. And they might just come up to the bridge. And I can be okay with that. I don't know where they're at, even in that moment. And so sometimes they might walk halfway across. And then there's a moment for me to meet them even further. Sometimes they might come all the way to me. But the goal is connection versus every time I give this vulnerability, I'm really doing it so that you fix me and make me feel
Mhm.
better. That
Yeah.
is my job. That is my responsibility. That's where we have counselors, therapists, coaches, mentors, journals. For me, I go for a run. I am very, very, we have to find, so play and joy, let's go back to that for a second, because we have to find the things that do really help us to feel alive. And so it's not just a playful, let me go. I mean, what are we doing as adults? Am I going to play with blocks? Like, am I going back to like childhood? What am I doing? I think we have to find the things right now at this moment of our life that just light us up. And for me, it's running. There was this huge season of my life where I was having to squeeze in runs or whatever. My husband and I created a workout called Burst Club. It was a 3-minute high intensity workout. And we really created it out of the necessity of traveling and speaking and always being in hotel rooms and only having a 4-foot space to do workouts in. We created this whole online training system where we could get a workout in 15 minutes. But what I didn't realize is that I was at the core a runner. I started running when I was in 5th grade. And I had given up running for so long. And I mean, I believe the science behind what we created, it's better, all this stuff. But my point is, this over the last 4 years, my son is an elite runner. He just made the U20 USA team. He'll be representing Team USA in Spain this next month on a trail run, one of 4 boys in the entire United States. And through his journey of choosing to run and not running his whole life, he started in 9th grade, really. This love came back for me of like, oh my gosh, I actually love running. He and I have found a connection point where we're both like in it. Every day he comes home and he nerds out and geeks out with me on all the splits and the times and all this stuff. And I just hold space to hear everything he's so excited about. And I'll go for runs and I will cry sometimes. When I'm feeling stuff, I'll just go empty it in a run. I'll journal while I run. I take my phone and I'll run and like speak to it at the same time. That's not everybody's jam. It might be Pilates, yoga, or something very, very calm, or a walk through the woods, or something else. But my point is finding something that lights you up will actually help you tap into that joy faster and the vulnerability of the joy, especially if you can tie something from your heart in that moment. So I used to, after my son Hosea passed away, I was running 12 miles a day. And I ended up after that 2 years with fibromyalgia. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but my skin hurt, my hair hurt. My kids would come up behind me and hug me and I would flinch. Like I trained them like, oh, don't hug mommy because she hurts when you hug her. It was awful. I was 28 years old and literally thought I was going to die before I hit 30. I was so sick. And so I had to stop running. But I remember in that season coming out of that, hearing clearly, it's because you've been running from something. And anytime we are running from things instead of running to things, it will always create that almost heart sickness in us because we're just running from something. And so the last 4 years of my life have been, what am I running to? What am I creating? What am I cultivating in my own soul? So every time I go for runs, I'm just like, oh, I'm so excited to create today, to be with myself today, to enjoy just the celebration of fresh air and breathing and the fact that I can move my legs. And I think it's so important that all of us who know how to push through and power through and do really, really hard things, that we find whatever it is that opens up our heart in that way.
Oh my gosh, that is so powerful. What am I running towards? I think we can trick ourselves into thinking that if we avoid and we put our head down, bum up, and we avoid the things that make us uncomfortable or the things that make us frustrated, conversations we don't want to have, we are moving away from discomfort towards comfort. And I think that what you just expressed there is the perfect picture around, no, we're not moving away from discomfort. We're not moving away from pain. We're moving towards sustained damage towards our own, not only our mental self, but our physical self. It might not look like a run for everyone, but the data around what happens to our own bodies physiologically when there's contempt in a relationship. We discount what happens to our own selves when we damage our own nervous systems, whether we're on the receiving or the giving end of it. The health consequences. The longest study ever done by Harvard is the one I reference so often, is the one that says that the greatest indicator of health and happiness is not irrelevant of where you're born, how much money you have, comes down to the quality and the depth of our relationships. So I think it's just such a beautiful picture around that loving accountability moment. Are we trying to avoid? Are we trying to run away? Are we trying to dissociate? Are we trying to perform our way out of the scariness of vulnerability under the illusion that that's moving us towards comfort? When
So
that's
good,
not
Lauren.
it's not the case. And I think that what you just shared there is just the perfect example of you can run as hard and as fast as you want, but thank God our body will catch up to us. And I think we punish our body so often. I can't believe my skin looks like this. I can't believe my back hurts. I can't believe, I have these health conditions. What a beautiful opportunity to say, hey, where am I not showing loving care and tenderness? And sometimes the answer is not that simple. It's not as simple as, okay, I need to take more vitamins. There's some really challenging things, but what a gift to be kind of shaken back into the reality of our own life to go, am I honoring this vessel that I've been given so that I can continue to pour into others and my own self as well? I'd love to ask you what you think so many people are missing when it comes to living a vulnerable and successful and deeply content life. What do you think, if you could have a conversation with every single member of the audience of the Connection podcast, anyone who's listening, what do you think would surprise them that maybe they haven't considered before about vulnerability and how that links to a successful and content life?
First and foremost, you can't connect with others if you aren't connected to yourself. It's just impossible. It's theoretically impossible. You can have a shallow and a level of connection with somebody, but you will never have deep connection with another unless you are deeply connected to yourself. So, the one thing I think a lot of people are missing is when it comes down to triggers and reactions, because we have been told, especially as women, that our reactions and our triggers, like, you're just PMSing. We have so much shame around the vulnerability of our reactions. And then we gaslight ourselves and we shame ourselves for how we just reacted to our children, how we reacted to our spouse. And if we really were honest, the reaction is just showing us a place in our life where we're not yet healed. It is literally a landmine that got stepped on. I call them emotional IEDs. The IEDs, the bombs that are under the surface, and all of us have hundreds of them buried under the surface, but they're emotional. We can't see them. We don't know they're there until they get stepped on, until they explode. So rather than shaming ourselves and feeling guilty and spiraling in mom guilt, it has been a journey for me of learning how to be with what that reaction is mirroring back to me, what that trigger is telling me wants and needs to be healed in me, not the circumstance and not the other person. And the more I've gone on that journey to just let myself be curious instead of judgmental, and I almost this posture of like, well, that's interesting. I just really lost my mind over that. Like, I wonder what was there for me. Or you open social media as a business owner, you're scrolling and you see some chick who's got what you want and is doing what you wish you could do. And you had a horrible week in work and business, you didn't get anything done. And you see this person just crushing it. You don't even realize that you stepped on an emotional ID, because all of a sudden you feel drained, you're tired, you don't feel like working, you're taken out for the whole day. And so there was a reaction that actually happened in you from simply what you saw. So it's not always a relationship, somebody saying something or doing something to you. We are reacting hundreds of times a day and don't realize it. But these moments are just literally invitations. They're literally inviting us to discover something about ourselves in that moment with what I see online. It might be an invitation to go, what's the story I'm making up about how she is versus how I am? What am I telling myself about who I am as a business owner? And I'm spiraling into, now I'm not capable. I can't do it. I'm behind. I'll never get it. I'll never figure it out. Right. Or if that situation with my kids, I have learned the power of those reactions are just showing them humanity, and that there is a very real aspect of, yeah, there's things that need to be healed in me. And I might be tired. When I'm tired, I'm more vulnerable. So rather than just saying, oh, yeah, I'm just tired, I go, no, my tiredness is exposing this place in me that really wants to be healed, and all my armor's gone. I don't have the super strength anymore to protect myself from what I don't want to see. So in that moment, if I'll look, man, I can get so much healing. And it's amazing because then we can get healed as we're hustling. I have a
Yeah.
program called Heal in the Hustle, because the hustle and our work is, and how we are with our spouse and kids while we're working, it's all showing us places that want to be healed. And if we can do it one little micro reaction at a time, we can heal ourselves to wholeness.
Yeah. And I love how you said there, what a superpower phrase. How interesting when we get triggered, as opposed to that self-judgment. I think that's such a beautiful answer. And something that I had a curiosity for, not only around vulnerability, but I want to get your take on the swing and the balance between, now I love what you mentioned for your program around and the use of the word hustle, because something I'm curious about is the balance. Now, balance is a tricky word. It's a the story behind the word balance for me is a powerful one. I remember for a few years there, I used to pick power words for my year. And one year I thought I'd like to have a bit of a better balance with my social life, with parenting, with business, with all of that. So my word for the year is going to be balance. Holy dooly, what you know, what an opportunity to sit in my own humanity, because that was the year where everything fell apart. Everything fell apart.
Wow.
I mean, like, parenting, marriage, work, like my own identity with my own self, everything fell apart. So yeah, be careful with your power words, guys.
Mhm.
But
That's
I
right. You found balance in a way you didn't even know,
You
probably.
know what though? After that year, that was the most humbling year. I discovered that for me, balance is not what I thought. It is
Yeah.
not ticking the box and saying, do I have this portion of my life allocated for this portion of my life allocated for that, this portion of my life allocated for that? I was flung so deeply into the depths of every aspect of my life, just being blasted wide open, that I was forced to ask myself the question, what actually is important to me? Am I putting my energy, my time into that? Am I just living my life the way I think it's supposed to look? And so I would love to hear what comes up for you when I ask you the question, not only as someone who's curious about the word balance, but someone who's a business owner, and I've been through so many seasons. My husband is a business owner. He's been through so many seasons. We are right in the middle of, he's got some big business goals. And so we're really trying to honor the season that we're in. And it is a season in terms of timing. We're going to have seasons that are quite intensive in terms of time and things like that. But the curiosity I have, something that can pop up a lot that I observe and that I honor, I think it's incredibly important to have regulation, to have balance, to have support, so to have mentors, to have a plan, and to understand the SMART goals, so T being timed if you are working a little bit past your capacity. Now, I want to know and hear from you, if I was to ask, let's say you have people who are business owners, who are entrepreneurs, who are in really high level positions, and it's taking a lot of their time, a lot of their energy, and they may or may not be doing well in terms of juggling their relationships at home. Something that they may ask you is, do you think that maybe it's naive for most entrepreneurs and women in business to say that you don't need to hustle? There are a lot of schools of thought out there. And I think you said the phrases, the gimmicks on Instagram that you might see pop up saying, oh, you can have it all. You can grow a business. You can do all these things and you don't have to hustle. I'm curious about what comes up for you around that word and how you would explain balance for women in business, for people, for entrepreneurs, for people who are trying to find that harmony themselves, what that looks like personally and professionally.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't actually think balance is achievable fully. I think I think regulation is. I think being rooted and grounded and regulated is. So the work that you're doing,
Right.
Lauren, is so important, because the more rooted, grounded, and regulated you are, the more powerfully you can choose in the moment. And that's really what it's about. We're wanting our power back. We're choosing
Mm.
words like balance, hoping that it somehow orders our schedule, orders our time, orders our life that feels like chaos. We feel out of control, right? And what we really need is the power inside to decide and choose and know what's right and best for us, what produces life and what doesn't in that moment. And so I got myself into something that I call the crazy cycle years ago. And this crazy cycle was me reacting to everything and everyone outside of me instead of really powerfully owning and deciding what was wanted and needed for me, what was needed for the business. And so when I think the biggest thing that I would say to this is, first and foremost, I don't ascribe to hustle is bad, hustle's wrong. If you're hustling, like this whole mentality that we have seen, which we've seen, what happens in our culture is there's always an answer to an overcorrection. So female business owners, we entered into the business realm, in the 80s was the first time women could even get loans from banks and really start businesses. And so what women entered into is a masculine driven hustle culture, the way men do it. We're hearing all the things, get up at 5 a.m. every day. And these things work for men, but they have a 24-hour hormonal testosterone replenishment. We have a 28-day season or cycle, right? So you're talking about seasons, the season you and your husband are in right now. And yes, even as women, we have to honor even physically down to like how our bodies are made and wired and work in such a way. So there's so much we could unpack on this. I'm actually writing a book right now called Feminine Hustle, because there is a way as women that we have learned to work based off culture and the model we stepped into. But there is a better way. And it doesn't mean don't hustle. So we had this overcorrection over here of hustle, grind till you drop, push through, power through, ignore your body, hurt yourself. But in the female entrepreneurship space, we've swung it to say, I guess the answer then is let's just be. Let's enter our rest era. Let's just kick our feet up on the beach and like post on Instagram our Stripe accounts and show that we can make millions of dollars doing absolutely nothing. And look at me, peace out, like I've built my business and it's so easy. And that's just not reality. It's truly just not reality. Yes, there are ways now with automations and AI and all this tech changing where things can grow faster. It doesn't actually change the felt sense of hustle in our life, though. I guarantee you those people are hustling just as hard. They're just projecting that they're not. So it's really not about do we hustle or not? Is hustle good or bad? Hustle isn't bad. It's how and why you're hustling. That's the problem. It's actually what's driving our hustle, especially as female business owners. And oftentimes, what is driving our hustle and the way that we're working and the way that we are getting so imbalanced is we don't realize and recognize we are driving and hustling and working out of proving, out of trying to earn a seat at the table, out of saying, I'm worthy. And when we feel those familiar feelings of I'm too much, I'm not enough, I'm behind, who am I? When we're all in that wrestle, right? And we're like not as connected to ourselves, we're out there hustling. So again, it's not that hustle itself is bad, it's how and why. So that kind of performative hustle will always drain us. It will always ruin our relationships and it will create disconnect there. But when we learn how to work and hustle out of more of how we are uniquely intuitively wired, birthing, creating things, nurturing things, loving things to life, that's how women do things. I didn't hustle and grind my children to college. I loved them. I birthed them. I loved them. I nurtured them. I connected with them. I got to know them. And then I released them. And that same way of being in our businesses is something that we can learn and train ourselves in how to be. And we really have to stay out of comparison of what we see and all these women who are doing all these amazing things. That's great. Take the best and pull from it what you can. But if it's sending you into like crazy town, it's not for you. That way of hustling and working is not for you. So I don't ascribe, all that to say, I don't ascribe to hustle is bad and we shouldn't hustle. We do have hustle, but I think we have to know why we're doing it, what's driving our hustle. And the way that I do that the most is vision. What's my vision? What am I really like? Not just like goals. Goals are different. My vision is who do I want to become at the end of this journey? Who do I actually want to be as the visionary leader of this business? If I hit this goal, what's more important is who I became. Values. What are the values driving my work and hustle? Those are like non-negotiable North Stars for me. Every time I feel like the pressure and things closing in on me, or I'm strained in my relationship with my kids or my husband, and those are just warning signs. They're like warnings on a dashboard. It doesn't mean toss it all and just be like enter rest era. It means, whoa, just hold up. Am I clear on my vision? Do I have my non-negotiable values driving me, or have I let something else sneak in here? And am I letting somebody else decide for me what's important? Am I letting some unknown person that I'm modeling myself after, am I letting that comparison drive me instead of my values? And then the last one's voice. Like, have I been able to ask and voice what I need? Is there something I need in this season, in this moment, in this day to just even regulate, to refresh myself, to be able to get back out there tomorrow? It's not even just like, hey, let's take a day off and everything's going to be fine. It's doing those things with intention and owning our voice and what we need in the moment. So those three things really guide me and keep me grounded, keep me on track of producing things that are life producing, not just balanced. It's more like, is this producing life or is it creating death? Life or death is really the choice for me. And I think that comes from a deep place for me. But that's an evaluator that I'm constantly evaluating. Is this decision, is this way of being, creating more life in myself and my relationships? Or is it not? Is it killing it? If so, there's just some adjustments I need to make.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's such a beautiful invitation into making sure that we are having that internal check, that internal relationship, not only personally but professionally. I have a couple of last questions for you.
Okay.
The first thing that I would like to ask is a question that a previous guest left for the next guest on the Connection podcast. And the question that she asked was, what do you do to ground yourself in times of stress?
Hmm. Great question. To ground myself in times of stress, I first will breathe. That sounds so basic, but it is your most basic human right is to air and to breath. And whenever we feel stressed, our fear is kicking in and it will make
Mm,
our breath short. It will make us get foggy. And so I just stop and take some deep breaths. And I'm not even like doing any sort of, let me go do my box breathing, 4 in, count, hold. There's nothing even
yeah.
specific. It's just honor the fact that I can breathe. And so I breathe. And then I ask myself every time, what am I feeling? What am I feeling right now? So in times of stress, the feelings are actually going to drive me. There's a statement I always say is if you don't have it, it will have you. So as high performers, we have learned to set our feelings aside and to do without feeling. The reality is though we're making 1,000 choices a day and we're doing it, science has shown, faster than the speed of light. It's hitting the emotional center of our brain before it ever hits logic. So what we want to grab for is logic when we're stressed. Let me try to think my way through this, but we can't because we're
Mm,
feeling something. So I take a
mm,
deep breath and I ask myself, what am I feeling? And I will just let myself say it. I feel afraid. I feel terrified.
mm,
I
mm,
feel scared. I feel lonely. I feel angry. And just even voicing it, I go, okay, what do I need? That's the next thing I ask myself. And it happens, train myself to do it. It happens literally in a split second when I'm starting to feel the pressure. Okay, what am I feeling
yeah.
right now? Okay, what do I need? And when I give myself those two gifts to connect with what I'm feeling and what I need, I can manage the stress. I can move myself
Mm,
through it. We're actually not really trying to manage it. I don't want to manage stress. I want to move through it to where I'm no
mm,
longer stressed. I'm feeling a sense of peace. I know what peace feels like, and you cannot put a price tag on your peace. And so, what
mm.
I'm always moving towards is how do I shift this state of stress to a felt experience of peace? Because when I'm in that space, it doesn't matter like what's happening around me. I can navigate it. I can handle that pressure differently.
I love that. I love how that's such a perfect picture around the fact that the stress part of our brain, our amygdala, the one that's responsible for the fight, flight, fawn, freeze, the one that's responsible from us, you know, not knowing what to do next or overreacting, that operates at twice the speed of our logic brain. You know,
Mhm.
our higher cortex, the part that's responsible for decision making. And when we can regulate that, even if it's just by saying what we feel or what we need, we're actually another way of describing it is reasoning with that the monkey part of the brain that's trying to overtake and trying to just run over everything. And whatever that tool is for you, never discount the simplicity of something when it comes to the fact that you're actually placing new neurological wiring that makes it easier to access next time. So, whether it works for you, great. If something simple, great. Something a little bit more, you might need a stronger framework the first few times that you're trying to find that piece, great. But that's such a perfect picture of the fact that when you can switch out of it, that's where the answers are. You can actually access logic again because you've allowed that part of yourself to be honored, not switched off and wrestled with. I think
Mhm.
that's so perfect. I'd love to ask you what question you would leave for the next podcast guest on the Connection podcast.
The question I would love to leave for the next guest would be around what are the last 1 or 2 triggers, things that have triggered you that you could turn into invitations for deeper healing, deeper connection with yourself, and then in turn, hopefully a deeper connection with somebody else because your reaction, your trigger is just an invitation.
That is so powerful. I'm even thinking through some of those answers for my own self now. So I think probably the last question to ask you would be, What are the last one or two triggers you can turn into deeper connection with yourself and others, Jenni Rae?
So the last trigger was taking my daughter to college and realizing my husband had a very different connection with her and was not responding the same way to her leaving as I was. And so I couldn't meet me in maybe some of that grief and some of that feeling, couldn't understand it fully. And so rather than just anger and rage at him of like, why don't you get this? Why, that initial reaction, right? We're human. That was there of like, man, like he doesn't get it at all. And like, he doesn't understand. It has become an opportunity for me to go, he is not the only person that I have been blessed with in life. And he may not understand this or get this right now, but who else can? And so that reaction has led me to connection with him by being able to release him to be where he is, and also connection with so many women. I cannot even tell you how many women have flooded my feed, my DMs, my Instagram, my Facebook, just saying, oh my word, I feel you, I get you. I've been sobbing, like watching all my friends leave, their kids leave for college. I have friends that I didn't even know were friends. I just feel so seen and felt and held. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was the reaction to how he didn't handle it the way that I wish he had, that I could have come home from that and fallen into his arms and him totally understand like the level of grief. That's not where he was at in this moment. And he may get there, but being able to release him and free him for that and still go, he's not my only person in life that can do that. There were actually girlfriends who got it on such a deep level. And truly, like, I feel like I got so many new friends out of it.
Yeah. And I think we can so easily and sneakily underestimate the influence of enmeshment on any of our patterns. And enmeshment tells us if my partner's reality is not exactly the same as my reality on every single topic, any single challenge that I'm experiencing, then they have abandoned me, they have betrayed me. Now, don't get me wrong, in some instances and really important with core values, that absolutely can be true. And also, we're going to keep saying that. And
yes, we are.
And also, where this person that we married to was never meant to be our everything. They were meant to be our strongest support. All of those things. Share all of our same values. Be on the same team. Wonderful. And also, they are a unique person who is going through their own distinct reality and distinct journey as well. And when we create that little bit of space for possibility that we can have an entire network of resources of people, that frees connection up to be so much richer with our partner. We can learn something that maybe we didn't learn before. We can experience support from others in a new way. And we can create room for our partner to go through the seasons of life that they're going to go through as well, without immediately giving them an F grade every time they don't say and do the exact same thing that we want them to do on the moment, at the moment, exactly when we need it. Because when you flip the tables, having someone expect that we read their minds and respond exactly the way that they want at any moment, it's not something that we would ever say is healthy for a normal relationship. But so often in these moments, we take that miscommunication or that rupture or that hurt, and we immediately go into, okay, well, we're not compatible and you don't see me, you don't know me. How can we recover from this? And important conversations can come out of that, which absolutely bring you closer. But what you just expressed there was that internal relationship that starts with our own selves first, which is, okay, is there room for curiosity? How much of this is my own, the word that you used before was how much is my own trigger, and how much of this can help me to explore the richness of two different realities that through that richness and that curiosity can bring us back together in a new way. And I really thank you for the richness of that, because that's so powerful. It's what so many of us can go through sometimes on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis. And it really matters in the small moments and the big moments as well. So I want to thank you so much, Jenni Rae, for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey with me, sharing your story, sharing your learnings, sharing all of your vulnerability. We have been so lucky to have you with us. And I'd love to hear where anyone in the audience can come find you. Do you have any resources that you'd like to share, and the best place to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to connect with me is on Instagram, and it's just my handle is at Jenni Rae Oates. We'll spell it for you because every one of those is spelled differently. So,
We'll put
we'll
your
make
link
sure.
in the show notes.
And then I definitely have a free resource I would love to leave your audience to really help them navigate these reactions and triggers and really look at the different ways that they get attached to the meaning, go into control, and then create a rescue pattern, a behavior pattern. So I walk through something called the crazy cycle in this. So I think that would be a really valuable resource to help them navigate what their reactions and triggers look like and how it leads to the different ways we behave in our relationships. So I can give you that link as well. It's on my site,
Yeah.
jennirae.com, but it's kind of a hidden link. So I'll make sure that you have that.
Yes. Okay. Beautiful. Well, I'm so glad to be able to share Jenni Rae's journey, her connection, how to reach her with everyone who listens to the Connection podcast. And if you have any other questions, if anything's come up for you and you want to dive a little bit deeper, come and hang out with me anytime. We are so blessed to be able to share this space with you and be able to walk alongside you as you uncover what connection is, not only for your own self, but with all the beautiful relationships in your world. So thank you for sharing this space with us, Jenni Rae, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you for having me.